This video is sponsored by Incogni. The Tempest opens with a raging storm conjured up by the exiled Duke of Milan, Prospero, who has lived on a remote island with his daughter Miranda for 12 years. A shipwreck scatters his enemies across the island. Among them, his treacherous brother Antonio, who stole his dukedom, and King Alonso of Naples, co-conspirator in Prospero's fall, along with his son Ferdinand, all pawns in a carefully orchestrated plan. With the help of Ariel, a spirit bound to his service, Prospero turns the island into a stage of illusions, confusion, and poetic justice. He intends to reclaim his power, punish his enemies, and secure his legacy by marrying Miranda to Ferdinand, heir to Naples.
My high charms work, and these, mine enemies, are all knit up in their distractions. They now are in my power.
The Tempest is Shakespeare's final play and is widely seen as his farewell to the stage. It draws on everything he mastered: magic, music, political drama, love, comedy, and questions of forgiveness to create a compact, haunting meditation on power, authorship, and letting go. When The Tempest was first performed in 1611 at the court of King James I, it wasn't just another royal performance. James I was Shakespeare's most important patron and a man famously fascinated by magic and witchcraft. He believed magic was real, dangerous, and politically charged. He even wrote Demonology, a guide to identifying witches and supernatural threats. It's no coincidence that Shakespeare, always aware of who paid the bills, filled his final solo play with magical elements. It seemed the king appreciated The Tempest and its magic, as just a year later he ordered a production of the play for his daughter's wedding, which was a political alliance with an important family within the Holy Roman Empire, an arranged marriage reflected in the story of Miranda and Ferdinand within the play.
If I have too austerely punished you, your compensation makes amends. Then, as my gift and thine own acquisition worthily purchased, take my daughter.
But beyond the royal parallels, The Tempest, Shakespeare's last staged work before quietly retiring to Stratford-upon-Avon, is often read as something more personal. And Prospero, the powerful figure who controls the narrative with his books and his knowledge, who creates the worlds that the actors operate within, looks a lot like the playwright himself, whose magic was the power of his imagination and poetic genius. And when it's over, like Shakespeare, Prospero breaks his tools and walks away.
Now my charms are all o'erthrown, and what strength I have is mine own.
He's had his run, the applause fades, the curtain falls. The spirit Ariel, the obedient servant of air, is often read as Shakespeare's muse, his imagination, his creative genius. Eager to please, ethereal, and ready to be set free.
Aye, that's my dainty Ariel. Ah, I shall miss thee, but yet thou shalt have freedom.
As Shakespeare bids farewell to the theatre, he also sets his muse free. And there's Caliban, earthly, angry, poetic, a slave and a former king. A figure who may reflect to the actor Will Kemp, Shakespeare's old clown, a gifted but unruly man who refused to follow direction and ultimately walked out on the company. Where Ariel is all grace and cooperation, Caliban is resistance, rebellion, and raw power. There's even a moment in Act 4 that feels like a direct reference to Shakespeare's own theatre, The Globe, when Prospero conjures up a mask, a form of elaborate courtly entertainment for his daughter's marriage, and when that performance ends abruptly, he reflects on the show they've just seen.
And like the baseless fabric of this vision, the cloud-capped towers, the gorgeous palaces, the solemn temples, the great globe itself, yea, all which it inherits shall dissolve. And like this insubstantial pageant faded, leave not a rack behind. We are such stuff as dreams are made of.
The Mask in Act 4 isn't just spectacle. It's also there to flatter King James I's obsession with dynastic unity. It celebrates the union of Naples and Milan, mirroring James's political dream of uniting England and Scotland. But just as the Mask reaches its peak, Prospero ends it abruptly, with the words,
"Our revels now are ended."
undercutting the illusion and reminding us of life's impermanence. Even royal power dissolves like a pageant in the air. With the Mask, Prospero blurs the line between reality and illusion, inviting the audience to question the nature of the performance they have witnessed and reflect on the role narrative and performance play in their lives. And by reading the play as an allegory for theatre and artist production, Shakespeare explores the intricacies of storytelling, illusion, and the collaborative nature of the dramatic arts. He invites us to reflect on the transformative power of theatrical experiences and the liberation that comes with artistic creation. By 1611, the time of the play's royal debut, Shakespeare had made his money on the London stage, and now asked the audience for permission to retire.
Let me not, since I have my dukedom got, and pardon the deceiver, dwell in this bare island by your spell.
But The Tempest is also a play of its time. In the early 17th century, Britain was actively pursuing colonization, particularly in the Americas, and Shakespeare includes subtle references to the so-called New World.
How beauteous mankind is! Oh, brave new world that has such people in't!
One of Shakespeare's prime sources was Montaigne's Of Cannibals, a widely circulated essay on Brazilian tribes that radically argues that they were morally superior to Europeans. And Prospero's subjugation of Caliban dramatizes the moral questions Montaigne raises about the white savior, conquest, colonization, and the illusion of European superiority. Montaigne suggests Europeans, with their wars and greed, may be more savage than cannibals, and Shakespeare mirrors this critique. The shipwrecked nobles in The Tempest plot murder and betrayal, while the so-called monster, Caliban, shows a poetic sensitivity to nature.
Be not afeared. The isle is full of noises, sounds, and sweet airs that give delight and hurt not.
Both Montaigne and Shakespeare ask who is the real barbarian, the native who lives according to nature or the conqueror who enslaves him. We must remember that Prospero doesn't just arrive on an empty island, he colonizes it. And if we read the character of Prospero through this lens, he represents the colonial ambitions of Great Britain as they attempt to settle North America and extract resources from the land. Prospero takes control of the island using his superior technology, his books and magic, the same way the Virginia Company used their guns and steel. This parallel emphasizes the technological superiority of colonizers and highlights the power imbalances inherent within colonial relationships. But for Shakespeare, conquest isn't just about land, it's about language. Prospero teaches Caliban to speak, but Caliban weaponizes it.
You taught me language, and my profit on't is, I know how to curse. The Red Plague rid you for learning me your language.
This moment captures the heart of colonial oppression, language as control and resistance through speech.
When thou didst not savage know thine own meaning, but would gabble like a thing most brutish, I endowed thy purposes with words that made them known.
Caliban in this reading is not just a monster or clown. He is the displaced indigenous population, once king of the island, now enslaved.
This island's mine, by Sycorax, my mother, which thou takest from me.
Ariel, meanwhile, is the indentured servant, bound by a contract and promised freedom if he performs enough labour. While Jacobean audiences may have cheered Prospero's dominance, 21st century audiences have become more aware of the subtle ways Shakespeare questions the imperialist project. In the genius hands of William Shakespeare, Caliban is not just brute force, he is poetic.
And then in dreaming the clouds methought would open and show riches ready to drop upon me. And when I waked, I cried to dream again.
His words remind us that the so-called savage possesses imagination and inner life, just as rich as Prospero's. Throughout the play, Shakespeare uses doubling to unsettle the moral landscape. Prospero, once the Duke of Milan, is exiled by his brother. Now he rules the island. Caliban once ruled the island, seized by Prospero. Caliban seeks to re-establish himself as king, and Prospero seeks revenge, but their stories mirror each other. By giving us the same situation in two different ways, the play highlights the ambiguous moral foundation of both revenge and political authority. Another example of mirroring is Prospero and Sycorax. Prospero is a magician who has been exiled to this island with his daughter. Sycorax, Caliban's mother, was a magician who had been exiled to this island with her son. Sycorax's use of magic is characterized as evil, but by contrast, Prospero's use of magic is characterized as virtuous. Again and again, Shakespeare gives us mirrored situations and asks, why do we judge them differently? Is revenge noble when dressed in velvet, but wicked when dressed in rags? It challenges us, the audience, to reflect on the dualities within ourselves and the world around us. In the final act, Prospero has his enemies defeated, broken, trembling. Ariel, the spirit of compassion, urges him to show mercy.
Your charm so strongly works them, that if you now beheld them, your affections would become tender.
Prospero, moved by the empathy of Ariel, chooses forgiveness. He renounces magic. He forgives even those who haven't asked for it.
This thing of darkness, I acknowledge mine.
The question is, of course, is Prospero's forgiveness self-serving? He regained his dukedom first and then forgives. So is it just political expedience? It is at this point that he acknowledges Caliban as a fellow human being for the first time in the play, and that moment of grace allows for the healing to commence. This forgiveness and Prospero's renunciation of his magic can also be read as a metaphor for Shakespeare's release of creative control once the story has ended, thus levelling the relationship between the author and the audience, mirroring that of Prospero and Caliban at the end of the play.
I must be here confined by you.
At the very end, Prospero, no longer a magician, turns to the audience, and so does Shakespeare. He asks for applause, not just as validation, but as release.
But release me from my bands with the help of your good hands. Gentle breath of yours my sails must fill, or else my project fails, which was to please.
We, the audience, hold the power now. The spell only breaks if we clap, and in letting go of his art, Shakespeare doesn't just end a play, he sets himself free. It's a humble end for a man who once shaped kings, built castles, islands and battlefields with language, and held the world on a stage. The Tempest is many things, a royal entertainment, a meditation on empire, and Shakespeare's farewell to the stage. But at its heart, it is a play about illusion, about the fragile line between power and performance. 4 centuries after the play's debut, we live in a world where truth often bends to the will of those in power, where nations behave like isolated islands. In that light, The Tempest feels shockingly modern. A story about authority, spectacle, grievance, social division, and the relentless struggle to control the narrative. And now for a quick ad. Our personal information is packaged and sold on the open market without our knowledge or permission. We all know that. Our full names, our dates of birth, our employment history, and of course, our emails. We all know someone who has been scammed or had their identity stolen. I had my own Instagram account cloned and have had numerous links sent to my phone from supposed official sites trying to get my details. You probably know that we have the right to request data brokers delete our information, but unfortunately, that would take someone like you or me years to do manually. That's what Incogni is for. It is incredibly easy to use. You just give them permission to reach out to the hundreds of data brokers on your behalf, request removal, and deal with any objections the data brokers come up with. You can use the code BOOKS at the link below to get an exclusive 60% off an annual Incogni plan. Thank you.